InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Evey Schweig. Welcome, Evey.
Thank you, Jay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'll tell our audience a little bit about you. Evey is a Chicagoland certified holistic health coach. She is a wife and mother of two with a degree in biology and is certified as a holistic health coach, which you're going to tell us about in a minute. And through her programs, Evey helps her clients improve their health, maintain a healthy weight, and live energy-filled, pain-free lives. Well, that's worthy goals. So why don't you explain to our audience what a health coach actually is and does?
I'd be happy to, because a health coach is a relatively new profession in the health field.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of a health coach as a new nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
Clients will come to a health coach if they want to help improve their health and wellness. The difference is that a health coach is takes a more holistic approach
Mm-hmm.
towards the client, whereas a nutritionist traditionally will tend to go to a prescribed regimen or menu that has been scientifically analyzed. A health coach will look at the entire individual.
Okay.
They will look for lifestyle issues as well.
Okay. And so why would a individual need a holistic health coach?
They come to health coaches, they're looking for health coaches because they sense that they would like to improve their health and wellness, but they're not quite sure how to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Many times I have clients come to me with issues that either they are having health issues, they just don't have the energy that they used to have before. Maybe they came from a doctor that said, you need to lose some weight, or you need to change the way you're eating, but are not being given the guidance on how to do that.
And when I was reading your intro, you have a degree in biology. Has that been helpful to becoming a health coach?
Very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been interested in biology. And fascinated with how the body works. And by doing this, working in the health field, I've actually gone back, was certified, studied more about nutrition and how it affects our health. Very few people really understand how important the food that they eat is and how they feel.
Mm-hmm. And so you help your patients make a connection between what they're eating and how they're feeling, or what they're eating and their energy?
Exactly. And a lot of times clients will come to me thinking that there is one issue. Another way that a health coach differs from a nutritionist is the first stage working with a client, I listen. Mm-hmm. A client comes and I will listen to hear what's going on in their lives, so that I can understand better maybe what's affecting them. And I'll ask questions to dig deeper to find out.
Okay. And so how did you go from being a wife and mother of two to becoming a holistic health coach?
That's a good question. And it started on my own journey. I actually always thought I was a very healthy eater, fairly healthy, but after a certain time, I started getting aches and pains, and I didn't understand why. I had a friend that recommended me to a holistic doctor, and I went to her, and Dr. Ashley Frere.
And how many years ago was this?
Probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And she took a look at me and she said, I can help you by doing chiropractic adjustments and working with Chinese medicine. But what you really need to do is you need to change your diet, which surprised me because I thought I was eating fairly healthfully. She indicated that I had a candida overgrowth, which is a yeast overgrowth, which is caused when there's too much sugar in your diet.
And isn't the yeast or the candida, can't that lead to autoimmune problems like arthritis?
Exactly. Inflammation is
Yeah.
a big indicator of.
And is there a test? Is it something is there a test for inflammation? It's something that you could feel?
Typically, people don't realize because they've gone their entire lives with inflammation. Inflammation can surface in joint pain, which in my case was happening as well, but it affects all the organs of the body. So it leads to chronic disease, it leads to obesity, it leads to heart disease, it leads to many of the different diseases that we have attributed to other causes.
And so if a client comes to you for holistic health coaching, and what are some of the signs you look for too much sugar, too much yeast?
Well, aside from them, if they're coming from a doctor who says you need to cut back, it has to do with mood, energy levels, just general feeling of lethargy, again, joint pain, different things like that. And it could be coming out as just skin conditions, rashes.
And the skin's part of our immune system?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's the largest organ of our body.
Okay.
So yes, lots of different internal problems that are going on. It could be something that they're not attributing to inflammation, but that they really should be addressing.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the difference between a health coach and a nutritionist, or even a dietitian? I think is something completely different that's more institutionalized?
Exactly.
Working at a hospital.
Exactly.
Or nursing
A
homes.
dietitian has studied the nutritional regulations, recommendations that are the guidelines for the medical profession. They deal with, so a client comes in, they will deal with the proper amount of carbohydrates, fats, proteins that they should be eating. Now, when they say should be eating, that's the general population. So it's not a personalized program for that individual. If an individual comes to me, as I mentioned, I will listen to what their concerns are. And then based on that, that's when their program starts, because I know then that maybe it is stress that they need to work with. Maybe it is sugar that they need to work with.
And if it's stress, what do you recommend?
If it's stress, then we work on ways to decompress. The first thing I tell clients is breathe. You know, if you're stressed, take a deep breath. If you're stressed, take a deep breath before you eat, because taking stress away from you will allow you to assimilate all the good nutrition that you're eating. If you're stressed, your body is not prepared to be eating. It's preparing for fight or flight.
Yeah, and the blood goes away from the stomach, and so there's less blood to digest or metabolize the food.
Exactly, and that is a metabolic condition that goes back ages to our ancestors.
Caveman.
Exactly, because if they were stressed, the blood needed to get to the muscle in the brain.
Well, doctors often refer to the fat around the midsection as stress fat.
That's exactly right, because what happens is you're not using the energy, you're storing it for when you have time to digest.
Okay. And so what are some of the common themes or patterns that you see with your patients or clients coming in?
I would say that the greatest challenge that my clients have is that they don't take care of themselves as well as they take care of others. So, for instance, I have a 40 or 50-year-old mother who comes in. She is so stressed preoccupied with taking care of her children or taking care of an elderly parent, that she's not taking care of herself. That stress that we talk about, maybe it's lack of sleep. She needs to work on her sleep. Physical activity. Maybe she's not getting enough physical activity.
And how important is our sleep to our diet and health?
Critical. It's very important. And most people don't realize how important sleep actually is, because when we're sleeping, our body is working, it's repairing, it's regenerating. So we need to
digesting.
And digesting. Well, hopefully it has you're not going to sleep on a full stomach, because what you don't want to do is you don't want your body digesting while you're sleeping. You want it to be repairing. So one of the things I talk to my
thought
clients
bowel
about,
movement in the morning was good.
it actually is part of a regular bodily process, right?
Yeah.
And it's also a sign that your nutrition is correct. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are eating a meal, but they're giving your body time to regenerate.
And so what would be a good rule of thumb? When's the last time you should eat before bed, like 2 hours before bed or 4 hours? What would be a good rule?
You know, again, because everyone is different, it's hard to set a rule for that. I like to suggest that around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you have your meal, and after 8 o'clock, you refrain from eating heavy foods. But again, because everyone is different, it's going to be different for that individual. It depends on when they wake up as well.
And alcohol, I know alcohol has some sugar in it. What's your advice on alcohol?
In moderation, everything in moderation. And I think one of the things that when I have clients come in, they fixate on one aspect of their lives, or they just the same way that they fixate on one type of food. So they're looking for a fix. They're looking for a supplement, or they're looking for things to make a quick fix. Well, the reality is they're where they are because it's been a lifetime in coming. So they need to work on small steps to make changes. One of the things that I tell them is you need to get back to the basics. You need to get back to whole foods and eating whole foods.
And what would your definition of whole foods be?
Whole foods are foods that look like they came from the earth. So, for instance, vegetables are whole foods. What is not a whole food is, or grains are whole foods. Fruits are whole foods. What are not whole foods are things that come in boxes, jars, containers, things that are highly processed. And by processing, I mean if you have a grain, but you're eating a bread where you can't see any of the grains in that bread, it's because it's been ground up and processed. So we want to get away from that processing and back to whole food eating.
And then are some breads better than other, or should we avoid bread altogether? Because I know there's some people who believe we shouldn't eat bread at all.
And again, bio-individuality. Everyone is different. I do not eat grains. It is better for me. I find I function better without that.
Well, what are some of the signs if you're eating something such as grains in your case that you shouldn't? What should we know it almost immediately? Like after the meal, we just feel like,
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Because again, everybody reacts differently. I don't tend to have a very pronounced reaction, but I do tend to get sluggish. I get foggy-brained. I just don't think as clearly. I don't have as much energy as I do if I stay away from it. Some people, if they're gluten intolerant or celiac disease, which is you cannot eat gluten at all, people will have very adverse reactions. They'll have digestive issues.
well, and it just seems as of late, this, gluten-free, and now you go to the grocery store, the health food store, they got whole sections on gluten-free products. Why is that?
Well, it's because people don't want to give up the foods that they love to eat. I do have an issue with some of the foods that are gluten-free, though, which is why I recommend going back to whole foods.
Right.
Because in order to make a gluten-free product, other ingredients need to be substituted in. And a lot of times that ingredient is sugar. Because you're looking for flavor, you're looking for texture, whatever it is, they're making substitutions. So my recommendation is to have foods that are whole foods. So go to foods that are fruits and vegetables. Go to foods where you can actually see the grains in the food, because you're breaking it down. It's not being broken down mechanically by a machine.
Now, I've heard, and we'll see if you agree, but most of our teeth are for mashing grains. You know, and then vegetables and fruit, and then only just a few teeth are meant to actually chew meat.
Tear,
Yeah. Well, before the show, you showed me a wonderful tip. Why don't you hand me those cards?
Sure. I'd love to.
And I'll hold this up so Jen can zoom in on it.
So the reason I brought these is because when I talk to clients, we're constantly talking about eating healthy foods. And I'm always looking for ways to give them quick tips. Because it's not always easy to eat a whole food product. You know, we're on the go, very busy, and there are times where we really do need to go to a box or a jar to make a meal. One of the things that the government has done for us is on every box of processed food there is a nutrient label.
But they'd never teach you how to read it.
Well, I'll teach you.
Okay, great.
So aside from giving you the fats and the sodium and cholesterol that you need to know, it will tell you what they consider a single serving. And what I like to talk to clients about is looking at the single serving amounts of the fiber, protein, and sugars. The reason being that, first of all, you don't want a lot of sugars in a single serving. The general rule is 5 grams or less is good for sugars. If it's more than that, you might want to stay away from that. Put it back on the shelf before you buy it. But protein is an energy source, much like sugar, but it's a slower energy source and one that's better for us than sugars. The reason sugars are bad is because it's a quick energy source that almost makes us, some people, hyper, but then will leave us crashing and leave us tired.
And can you say some more about protein, sources of protein? I know there are some proteins in grains, and the typical protein we think of, you know, meat and eggs and cheese, but also beans.
Beans are a great source of protein, absolutely. For if someone is a vegetarian, beans are great, but always have a variety, because the issue with plant-based meals or diets is that the amino acids don't come from just one plant. We need many different amino acids to form protein in our bodies. So what we need to do is have a variety of beans, grains. Quinoa is a great source of protein. It is actually one of the few plants that have a full complement of protein, complement of amino acids that make up the proteins that we need.
Yeah.
So the reason protein is here is because we do want it as a energy source. What I tell clients is when you're looking at a label, it's not always obvious whether it's going to be more nutritious or not. And sometimes you have to make decisions when you're out there looking for, say, cereal. What I tell them is, this is called Altman's rule. It's based on a rule by Dr. Wayne Altman from Tufts University. If you take your fiber and your protein and add them together, they should always exceed the amount of sugar in the food product. So in this case, you have 4 grams of fiber, 5 grams of protein, added together 9 grams versus 1 gram of sugar. That, I would say, would be a healthy food to eat. Now, on the other hand, if you want to take a look at the next
Okay.
plaque.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Here is another food that has 4 grams of fiber, 4 grams of protein, so 8 grams altogether, which is fairly similar to the first one that we were talking about. But if you look at it, it has 12 grams of sugar. That 12 grams exceeds the fiber and protein. So it's probably not going to be as good for you as the first label that we looked at. Now, the interesting thing is, if we take a look at our third plaque here,
Okay.
I'll show you what these labels are for. So the first label was for Quaker oatmeal. Another thing that the label is good for is to look and see how many ingredients are in there. If you look at the Quaker oats, the natural Quaker oats is 100% oatmeal. If you go down, the second label that had all the sugar in it was Quaker instant oatmeal with apples and cinnamon. Now, typically you would think oatmeal's good, right? But if you look in the ingredients, you will see that sugar has been added. And that sugar is empty calories. It's not giving us nutrition. It's giving us energy. But we need other things. So if you took your oatmeal and you added real apples and cinnamon to it, and maybe added a little bit of honey or some other light sweetener.
I usually throw in raisins or maybe a banana.
Dried fruit is great. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great source. That would be a healthier alternative than buying the instant. So this is an example of, that I would give a client if they are pressed for time and they're looking for healthy alternatives, but not necessarily things that they have a lot of time to cook. This might be a good, quick way to make a quick assessment of something that might be healthier for them.
And so if somebody was shopping and there's 3 different oatmeals or 10 different oatmeals
Right.
on the shelf, this is one way to discern one from the other.
Exactly. And if you're looking at cereals, it's very hard to find a cereal that's not filled with sugar. And so you really do want to look for a high fiber,
And
low
how
sugar.
detrimental, because when I was a kid growing up, it was milk and cereal for breakfast. How detrimental is it for young children to be eating cereals so high in sugar?
Well, there is rising obesity rates in the United States.
Oh,
yeah. And I just was
And diabetes?
diabetes
And
as well.
heart disease is coming much younger?
Yes. Not only that, but high sugar, as I mentioned, gives lots of energy very quickly, and then
The crash.
you crash. All right, because it's assimilated, because the insulin shuttles it into the cells where they're needed, or it goes into fat storage, and it leaves the blood sugar low. If a child is having that before going to school, either they're shifting around, fidgeting in their seat because they're still high on that sugar, or they're crashing. And studies have shown that students that have a healthy breakfast and have a better attention are able to focus more. Protein is good for focusing.
That's where Operation Head Start
Exactly.
began. It was helping children from lower incomes homes who
Right.
most of them were going to school without eating breakfast, and then they would
Right.
get fed.
So the rule is breakfast is better than no breakfast, and a breakfast high in protein and fiber is
And what
best.
about coffee? Is that something, I know what you're going to say already. Individual moderation.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I just answered
Exactly.
Anything else you want to expand on coffee?
No, I mean, caffeine, always be careful about caffeine levels. I actually recommend tea over coffee because of the lower caffeine levels and because it has phytonutrients in it, catechins.
And
that are
any particular types of teas?
green tea.
Green tea?
Green tea is very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have less than 5 minutes, but I look at this. These look delicious. I haven't tried it yet, but I know I will. Tell a little bit about, you made these,
Yes,
and you sell these.
I do sell them.
Okay, so tell our audience a little bit about your product and how you go about making it and distributing it, and what's the ingredients. Hey, wait a second. Well, the ingredients list is quite short, and it's all natural,
All whole foods, right?
and I don't see the, the breakdown like the other one.
It's true. It's because it's made in it's in a private kitchen. It's not a commercial kitchen.
Okay. So, so tell our audience about.
So I came up with these because when I went on my anti-inflammatory diet, I was looking for crunchy foods, and I was having a hard time finding them. These crackers are non-grain, non-dairy added, non-added sugar. And as you can see the grains in them. So this is my savory cracker. I have almond crackers as well, and I also have a Garden Fresh that's kind of like a pizza.
Are these hard to make?
I should say yes, shouldn't I? Actually, I know the recipe. They are dehydrated, so that they're not baked. So they're actually considered raw. So they have the natural enzymes of the raw ingredients.
Okay. And I know that raw food fattest, or raw, I don't know if I use the term fattest anymore. Sorry about that. But people who enjoy raw foods,
Yes.
they believe that anytime you cook things, you're destroying nutrients.
Exactly. So that's why I do in the dehydrator. I do a lot of foods in the dehydrator.
Okay, and you could generally pick up, I have a dehydrator, but tell our audience what a dehydrator is, where they can get it.
A dehydrator is an oven that uses convection currents of warm air to extract the liquids from foods. So you can make wonderful crisp crackers like this, or you can do fruit leathers, which is like a fruit roll-up, a much healthier fruit roll-up, because you're not adding the added sugars.
Like strawberries.
Exactly. And if you do it with banana, you get this wonderful texture. So yes, it's just another way to preserve foods. Another one is dehydrated tomatoes, sun-dried tomatoes that you can make with that.
Now, do you ever work with children?
I do. I work with individuals, I work with families, I work with groups. I love working with families because I love the fact that parents and children are learning together. They're starting new.
And they're growing and changing together.
Exactly.
So what tips do you have for the families?
Get back to the basics. Teach your children to cook because you are their role models. If you are not cooking, if you are not showing them how to do this, they are not learning those skills, and they won't be able to pass those on to their children. So it's a wonderful way to learn together.
Well, we're going to leave it at that because we're all learning together. I learned some things today. For more information about Infinity Foundation, Inner Quest Talk Show, Evey Schweig, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good fortune, and good spirits. Evey, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Appreciate it.